You can go ahead.
Good evening and welcome to the annual meeting of the Cedar Rapids Community School District Board of Education meeting. It's Monday, November 9th, 2020, and I'll call our meeting to order. Do I have a motion to approve the November 9th annual meeting agenda as presented?
I move that the agenda of Monday, November 9th, 2020 Board of Education annual meeting be approved as set forth and that each item is considered ready for discussion and or action.
Is there a second?
I second that.
And this is a roll call vote. Director Anhalt.
Aye.
Director Wortscheding.
Aye.
Director Garlock.
Aye.
Director Newman.
Aye.
Director Merschbach.
Aye.
Director Tominski.
Aye.
Didn't get me.
President Humbles.
Aye.
I'm so sorry about that. Thank you for reminding me. All right. Next on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our board meeting and work session on October 26th. Are there any questions or concerns regarding the minutes from that meeting? If not, those who are in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. The minutes stand approved. Next on our agenda this evening is the election of the presiding officer of the Board of Education. And at this time, I'd like to open up the nominations for the position of President of the Board of Directors.
I'd like to nominate Nancy Humbles for the office of President.
Are there any other nominations? If not, then I will officially declare the nominations closed. And at this time, I'm going to ask you to vote by roll call. Director Wortscheding.
Aye.
Director Garlock.
Aye.
Director Merschbach.
Aye.
Director Anhalt.
Aye.
Director Newman.
Aye.
Director Tominski.
Aye.
President Humbles.
Aye.
Congratulations, Director Humbles. You have been elected to serve as the president of the Cedar Rapids Community School District Board of Education. And at this time, I will administer the oath of office. If you would please raise your right hand. Do you, Nancy Humbles, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the office of the President of the Board of Directors of the Cedar Rapids Community School District in the County of Lynn, State of Iowa, as now or hereafter required by law? If so, please respond by saying, I will.
I will.
Congratulations, President Humbles.
Thank you.
President Humbles.
Thank you. Okay. Up next is the election of the Vice President for the Board of Education. At this time, I would like to open nominations for the position of Vice President of the Board of Directors. Are there any nominations?
I'd like to self-nominate for the office of Vice President.
I would like to nominate Jennifer Borcherding for the office of Vice President.
Are there any other nominations? I officially declared the nominations closed. At this time, I will ask you to vote by texting Board Secretary Day.
At this time, I have the voting is as follows. Cindy Garlock for Jennifer Borcherding. Dexter Merschbrock for David Tominski. David Tominski for David Tominski. Nancy Humbles, David Tominski. Jen Newman, David Tominski. Jennifer Borcherding, Jennifer Borcherding. Congratulations, Director Tominski. You've been selected to serve as the Vice President of the Cedar Rapids Community School District Board of Education. And at this time, I will ask you to come forward for the oath of office. If you would please raise your right hand. Do you, David Tominski, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the office of Vice President of the Board of Directors of the Cedar Rapids Community School District in the County of Lynn, State of Iowa, as now or hereafter required by law? If so, please respond by saying, I will.
I will.
Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
The last item on our annual meeting agenda this evening is the conflict of interest statements. Just want to remind board members, as is customary, an email will be sent to each of you tomorrow morning with signed copies, asking for signed copies of your statement, which will be due back in the office by the end of this week.
With no further business for our annual meeting, with no further business for our annual meeting, this meeting is adjourned.
And we will need to wait until 5:40 to start our next board meeting. Good evening, Mr. Gifford. We are just waiting to start our second board meeting, and as soon as we do, we will let you know when we get to the portion where you'd like to address the school board.
Now.
I'd like to call to order our October 26, 2020 Board of Education meeting work session for the Cedar Rapids Community School District. For the record, our meeting is currently being live streamed on the district YouTube channel. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
This requires a roll call.
Director Anhalt,
Aye.
Director Borcherding,
Aye.
Director Garlock,
Aye.
Director Newman,
Aye.
Director Merschbrag,
Aye.
Director Tominski.
Aye.
President Humbles.
Aye. Now we'll turn to our Superintendent Bush for her report.
Thank you, President Humbles, and I will share a presentation tonight on the screen.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, and if board members and others would mind giving me a thumbs up if you can see the presentation. Looks like so. Thank you very much. Excellent. So good evening, everyone. Good to see you on the screen, and audience members, welcome, and we're glad you're with us tonight, November 9th. Certainly the weather this weekend didn't feel like November weather, and I'm not complaining, but we are headed into the next season, and certainly we'll be keeping our eyes open on the temperatures as they continue to rise and fall. Just a few wonderful announcements this evening. So proud of our employees, and here too for you on the screen. Congratulations to Dr. Jamie Sebring and Jamie Cummins, counselor at Jefferson. Dr. Sebring has been named the 2020 Lynn Reinecke Educator of the Year by Iowa Safe Schools for her work in creating more inclusive learning environments for LGBTQ youth. And also congratulations to Jamie Cummins, counselor at Jefferson High School, who's been named the 2020 Iowa School Counselor Association High School Counselor of the Year. So proud of our employees and the hard work they continue to do. And these are just two examples of some of our folks who just really step up to the plate every day for our kids. So congratulations to both Jamie and Jamie. Just a reminder to our community, this is just a little interesting note. We have an art collection as a school district, and we have a committee who oversees that collection. And one of our pieces, one of Grant Wood's pieces called Young Corn, we were asked by a group called the Iowa Stubborn Limited Liability Company out of New York City, asked permission to use this visual in part of their set design for the production of The Music Man, which is scheduled to open on Broadway in 2021. Our art collection committee has approved that usage, and so our very own artwork by our very own local artist and celebrated Grant Wood will be appearing on Broadway next year. So just wanted to share that great information and how proud we are to have an art collection of the visual arts in our school district. This is the next reminder about updates, and the rest of my superintendent's updates really going to focus on COVID-19. And just as information changes daily, want to remind our community members where they can find information. This is a snapshot of our website, where if you were to click on our website and any of these visuals that look like this safe mask, would take you right to our health website. You'll find resources on that website, ways to contact our school nurses, even most recent video that's aligned with our frequently asked questions, just one of the components of understanding the difference between quarantine and isolation, as well as our data dashboard that communicates the number of positive cases as well as those in quarantine, both from students and staff perspective. I think that this is, of course, top of mind of everyone in our school district right now, especially as the county cases The positivity rate on the average have risen steadily over the past couple of weeks, as well as considerations of how this impacts our community, our students, our staff, and our family members. So just have a couple of announcements and updates that have gone out to our community, but also folks are asking, what is this going to mean in the days and weeks to come? So just as a quick overview, last week, our county did reach over 15% county average positivity rate. That was an impact certainly on adult community spread is what our county was reporting. There's been some, of course, in our business, we take care of children. There have been some student data, as you can see in our data dashboard, some students that have tested positive, but that's not the pervasive percentage. In our data, as well as the county data, we're seeing this amongst the adult community. So we had a direct impact on one of our schools, that being Hoover Elementary. Hoover had an increase of staff being affected by the not just staff that was testing positive, but those who also needed to be in quarantine and or isolation, to the point where it was hard to continue to sustain the number of adults who were going to be absent from that building. So we did apply for a waiver last Friday. We were granted that waiver late Friday evening, and were able to plan accordingly to support the staff, students, and families at Hoover. Because we anticipated enough staff return by the week of 11/16, we were able to only request for just this week for Hoover. We can request up to 14 days. We only needed to request 7 for Hoover at this point in time. However, over the weekend, there was another school that was impacted. They also had a rise of staff absence last week. And then over the weekend, they were impacted even more. And so we applied today for JSA, which is Johnson STEAM Academy, for a waiver for them. They're not in quite the same situation as Hoover. And because of the impact that happened over the weekend and the number of staff, we've applied for 2 weeks, for 14 days for Johnson STEAM Academy. We applied today. The DE allows for 48 hours pending a decision. So we are immediately going to remote instruction for Johnson STEAM Academy tomorrow, pending hearing back from the Department of Education. If we are denied by the Department of Education, then we would ask that Johnson STEAM Academy go back to instruction after the 48-hour period, as we are pending that decision. So that shifts into this week. And today, the rate of the county positivity average is 21.7%. It is no longer between the 15 and 20%. It is now shifted to above 20%. So again, as our county is reporting, it's really impact on adult community spread is what we're seeing, is what the data is telling our county with their contact tracing information. This, of course, has impacted all sorts of employers in our county. We, for example, have an increased number of staff members taking what's called FCCRA leave, and that's for whether they're in quarantine or if they're affected with a positive case. And that's about 5.8% of our total staff population. Just so you can put that in context, Hoover's had over 35% of their adult population affected. As an entire district, we're having 5.8% affected. However, it continues to compound, especially in our smaller environments where you have fewer people. We have some very large departments with a lot more people. And so just kind of puts that into perspective. We also have buildings who, because of the derecho, are still in remote instruction. So this, when we're requiring or asking for waivers from the Department of Education, that is only for those who are in in-person instruction. So obviously, we're also seeing in our county an impact on our health system. There's increased hospitalizations. And so just as a reminder, we did send this out on Friday to our community, but just a reminder of what the DE and public health guidance is. As you can see on the screen, there are this is the place in which we're living right now. The community transition, which would be called substantial controlled, is is when there's 15 to 20% positivity in a county average over the past 14 days and 10% absenteeism among students or an impact on the system in which we would not be able to sustain operations. Other districts, you may be hearing about other districts who are recommending closure right now, or remote instruction, I should say, not closure. That is due to, for example, some districts, they had an entire department affected, like a transportation department affected, where they didn't have enough drivers to be able to sustain schooling. So they were shifting to remote instruction. So the Department of Education, as well as the Department of Public Health, is collaborating with districts to make best decisions when recommending moving to remote instruction. We, as a county, have moved from this particular area of county average down to community transition. And we need to keep our eyes on if it becomes a substantial uncontrolled situation. What the difference is between controlled and uncontrolled is actually that sustainability of the healthcare resources. So if Lynn County were to say that our healthcare resource capacity, it has deep concerns, we would work directly with them, and then we would certainly keep the board informed and apply for potentially a waiver to go remote for the entire district, which would be the current schools who are currently in in-person instruction. And just again, as a reminder, some of our secondary schools are already in remote instruction. Some of those schools were potentially are scheduled to come back next week. So we would have to keep our eyes on that as well if we needed to make additional transition plans, if indeed our healthcare system were to be compromised and we had to make that decision as a school district. So just wanted to provide an update, and everyone is, of course, very concerned and want to keep safety of our students, our staff, and our families of the top priority. So thank you. That's all that I have for a presentation this evening.
Thank you, Superintendent Bush, for keeping us informed about what is happening and what the district is doing. Do we have any board reports?
President Humbles, I have a couple items for a board report. First, the Urban Education Network held its annual meeting last Thursday evening via Zoom. The UEN's a consortium of Iowa's 8 largest districts, and I think it's 9 smaller associate member districts. There were several of us participating in the meeting. Superintendent Bush and Directors Borcherding and Tominski were also there with me. So to the 3 of you, please feel free to add any comments if I have forgotten anything. But mostly our time on that Zoom meeting was spent primarily with the UEN legislative priorities for the 2021 session. I will email the detailed document with all those priorities to all of you tomorrow. But tonight I just wanted to highlight it for all of you and for the community that might be listening in to us. So there were 8 priorities, or are 8 priorities. The first one, in order to fulfill all the goals of public schools, we need to have adequate resources. The UEN is advocating for a 3.75% increase in our SSA for next year. Number 2 is to address student opportunity equity by providing needs-driven formulas for programs for our student populations that are struggling most with achievement gaps. And that would include additional funding for full-day kindergarten. The third priority is to take steps to address teacher administration and staff shortage. Again, a lot of that is funding related, but also implementing policies that help us hire and retain a diverse workforce. Fourth one, as we are all well aware, in light of COVID and the derecho, we need an expansion of mental health services, both for students and for staff. Number 5 is to make public schools the priority, simply meaning that we need to fund public schools before we consider an increase in funding to private schools. Number 6 is school safety. 7 is expanding access to high-speed internet throughout the state. And the last priority addresses remote learning and instructional time, a timely topic for us. The UEN supports the ability of local school leaders to determine when in-person learning is not advised and allowing the switch to online learning. Decisions involving emergency, weather, public health should all be made at the local level. And of course, for us, this is a position that this board took earlier in the year, expressing our desire to have more local control over those return to learn plans. So secondly, just like while I have the floor, I want to thank Superintendent Bush for her presentation on COVID. I think that helps all of us understand the current situation that we're in the community and here in the school district. I do want to just personally say that I would be very supportive if the district decides to seek a waiver to move to complete remote instruction. I feel like we're at sort of a critical juncture here in terms of public health. So I would certainly support that. And if you have any questions about the UEN priorities, I would be glad to answer them. Or if any of you who are in attendance have anything to add.
Thank you, Cindy. I would also like to say that I want everyone to know that we are listening and we are hearing your concerns and that we are in support of our superintendent and administration. And I also am in support if we have to transition into remote. So thank you for all the hard work. And the COVID update was very helpful because that has been a growing concern. So I thank you, Superintendent Bush, for that update.
President Humbles, I have a clarifying question for the superintendent's report. And that would simply be, do we know the criteria on the sustained uncontrollable? Basically, what has to happen from the healthcare resources? Is that a proclamation from Lynn County Public Health? What has to happen for that to be declared?
Yes, it is Lynn County Public Health. They assess the entire health system and whether the stress that's on the system, and they are in daily communication with not just hospitals, but also other practitioners to assess the situation if it gets to a point where it is compromised. And so that they are a primary conduit and would be our guide to, and then also would be willing, certainly, to help advocate for our school district. I just want to publicly give a huge shout out to our public health team who has been so responsive, helpful, and informative. So they would be the ones to help us determine that.
But they don't have specific metrics like positivity rates or hospital beds available.
So they do, but I don't know what those are. It's about the healthcare system, not about positivity rate. So
okay.
Hospital beds being taken, et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board reports?
President Humbles. I would like to again remind board members that the 75th Annual IASB Convention is actually starting tomorrow with a pre-convention session on equity, and then it will be followed by the regular convention on November 18th and 19th. I'm saying regular, as we know, it won't be the regular, it will be all online, but again, it's not too late to register for those that haven't. And again, if you're a registered participant, you don't have to stream live. You can, it will be recorded, and those that are registered will be able to go back and look at the sessions at a later date. So just to a reminder on that. And I did have a question I think several board members have already asked about superintendent's comments on COVID. And I was just going to ask what the possibility would be to have a district to go remote because of the rising concerns, and understand that the student population doesn't seem to be. But again, I think some of that is strictly because we have many students that aren't being tested. So their numbers for our adults, our staff is, and so I think that's one of the reasons why we have a positive.
Thank you for your comment.
And Gary, we could get back to you because we, because the open law, we really, I mean, if you have any additional ones, we can talk about that later.
I understand.
Okay, and I appreciate that. Any other board reports? Seeing none, we'll move on to communications, delegations, and petitions. We'll invite our public speakers to address the board. I'd like to remind those who have requested to address the board to please state your name and address for record when called. You will be given up to 5 minutes for your remarks. Board Secretary Day will serve as your timer and inform you when your time is up. Additionally, in order to abide by the open meeting law, I'd like to remind our speakers that there will be no dialogue between board members and the public during this time, except to clarify the nature of the questions or comments from the individual speaking. Laurel, will you call the first speaker?
Thank you, President Humbles. Members of the board, our first speaker this evening is Joe Gifford. Joe is coming to talk with us this evening about open enrollment transfer and did send information to you all ahead of this evening's meeting, which I forwarded this afternoon. Mr. Gifford, if you would like to go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
We sure can.
Okay. My name is Joe Gifford. My address is 1706 Woodcrest Street, Northeast. We just purchased this house recently. In fact, started moving in about a week and a half ago. Prior to purchasing the house, if you know where this is, it's on the north end of Council Street, right on the edge of the Linn-Mar School District, and some streets south of us are actually in Linn-Mar, and vice versa. It kind of zigzags around right here. We asked, I have 3 children that attend Jackson at the moment, Jackson Elementary School. And we asked the Linn-Mar School District what would happen here and if we would be going to this school, because the schools are closer to us over here. And they said, sure, just fill out the open enrollment paperwork because it's a move. So we did that and we were approved. And that I sent that email to you that said that there was the approval, and then we were filling out the paperwork for it. And obviously, I didn't know everything that was involved at the moment. And then on, I believe it was last Friday, we see somewhere around Friday the 30th, I got a call from Mr. Duffy at the elementary school saying he need to ask for records. And then by Monday, I was getting a copy on an email at work that's saying that the Cedar Rapids School District was going to deny it based on it was filed late. So I talked to Mr. Rice later that day, and he told me that it was state law that anything after March 1st was an automatic denial if it wasn't under certain criteria. So I checked into the open enrollment handbook and into the laws 282 and sent you copies of what I found. And it actually says that it can be done, even right in the handbook, that it's up to the discretion at any time during the year of the 2 school boards to agree. And Miss Rivas even sent an email that I sent you copies of that it had the section page 3 in the handbook where one of the questions, if a parent or guardian misses the open enrollment deadline and does not have good cause, may they still apply for open enrollment? Yes. An application for open enrollment may be granted at any time with approval of resident and receiving districts. I'm not sure where we go with the good cause too, because part of the thing that's happened here is we did intend to go to Jackson. And in fact, I think it was beginning of August when we had to make our choice. And I did that. And then August 10th, as you know, derecho came through and destroyed the house we were living in. And we lived in a hotel for almost about 2 months until we were able to find a decent house to live in and buy. And we purchased it over here. And that's part of what's going on here is that I sent you the information showing that the board can make the decision to allow this open enrollment to happen. Mr. Rice, when I talked to him, said that he would go with what the board's recommendation was. And I would appreciate it if they could. We're starting to get back to a normal life. As you know, there's a lot going on. I've heard some good comments about the COVID stuff. And I'm concerned as a parent too with that, with children in school. But at the same time, we're trying to continue to give the children it's in their best interest to have stability and be able to go to school closer to our house. And although it'd be a change in schools for them, they wouldn't have to change multiple times. So I've sent the information showing that the rules do say that this can be decided on. And I would really appreciate if the board would decide in our favor for the children to be able to go to open enrollment with Linn-Mar School District. They've already said they were okay with it. I sent Mr. Rice the copies of the open enrollment paperwork I filled out for this year as well as next year. Linn-Mar has already said they would approve for next year because it's well before March 1st. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing. And I guess I'll just continue to listen to the comments.
And thank you for your comments, and someone will get back to you. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Tanya Johnson. Tanya is asked to speak to the board this evening about the National Board Certified Teachers renewing certificates and to speak about COVID. Ms. Johnson, are you with us?
Yeah, I am. Hello, Tanya Johnson, 3816 Riverside Drive, Northeast, and I am addressing you as the Cedar Rapids Education Association president. So first, I wanted to share some really good news. We have 3 teachers who found out Halloween weekend that they had renewed their certification for National Board. Those teachers are Brett Hoyer at Kennedy, Chris LaFrenz from Cleveland, and Sherry Kopecki from Cleveland. So a big congratulations to them. It is not an easy task to get your initial certification or to renew your certification. So we're super happy about that. And just for some of you who may not know, Cedar Rapids has the most certified teachers, National Board certified teachers in the state. And right now we have 50 that are teaching in Cedar Rapids, and hopefully in December we'll be able to add a few more to that list. But we really appreciate our district knowing that this is an important thing to do, and it makes our teachers better. And we appreciate the increase in pay that comes with that and helps our teachers to make that decision. The next thing I wanted to talk about was I wanted to thank the principals and district admin that were able to meet with our CREA exec board on October 28th. We reviewed the comments from our CREA survey, and it was a good feeling to work virtually side by side with the administrators to problem solve the over 300 comments that were shared on our CREA survey. We hope that we can get together and work collaboratively like that again sometime. The other thing I just wanted to say was we have the voluntary retirement incentive that is going to be discussed tonight, or not discussed, but it's on the consent agenda for policies. And I just wanted to make sure people that are looking at that maybe for the first time, the wellness incentive that is in there for many of our staff right now is something that our teachers bargained several years ago and was in our teaching contract until collective bargaining kind of took that away, and then it got moved into the board policy. So we are happy to say that many groups now earn those wellness days because of something that our teachers put into the contract. Also, we just want to, or I just want to say to be thinking about maybe some possible changes in that early retirement incentive moving into this year as we look into next year and our funds being depleted because of COVID, and maybe the looking at our numbers and how much money we're going to have. It definitely would be a lot better to give a nice incentive, an additional incentive for teachers who could retire, so that we don't have to look at riffing teachers in the new for the new year. Lastly, I want to thank our paras, teachers, and all of our staff who have been extremely flexible in this, in the work they're doing. COVID and derecho have made everything that we're doing this year different. We've had to rethink how we work for our CRCSD students. Every day is something new, and it is definitely hard work. Our CRCSD staff are working hard virtually and in person, and it's amazing the work that they are doing. Very last, we really appreciate the district and the school board continuing to keep the safety of our students and our staff at the forefront. I am involved in many meetings, and I know that everyone is looking at this closely to make sure that we are doing what's best and what's safe for our students. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanya. Do we have any other ones at all, Laurel?
We have no other speakers this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to our consent agenda, are there any items that a board member would like to pull for comment, question, or separate vote?
President Humbles,
Yes.
I would like, and it's difficult not having I'm working between two devices trying to find the board agenda and on my phone. It's the item that dealing with the open enrollment denial. I guess it's BA 2100806.
Mm-hmm.
And the very last one, BA 21151.
Okay, so you would like those pulled for further discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
Does anybody else have anything?
Does anyone else have anything that they would like to have pulled too?
Let's go ahead and take care of these items first then.
Gary, we can address, we'll have someone talk to you, discuss the open enrollment, the BA 21008, the open enrollment. John?
Yes, President Humbles.
Wait a minute. Gary, what specific questions
What's
do you
the
have?
question? Well,
Yeah.
I think it's generated. I know we frequently get these open requests, and typically I know it seems the majority of the time they're denied because of not meeting the March 1st date. After listening to the speaker tonight, it just seems like there's a logical and reason for not meeting the March 1st deadline, to having been impacted by the derecho that came after March 1st. that he seems to have, I would think, a legitimate concern and cause for allowing it to happen. So that's my feeling. And I guess at this point, I wouldn't approve it or go along with the improvement unless John or someone can share more information.
Sure. I'm happy to share our process overall. The state does provide a very lengthy 30 or 40 page handbook on how to handle open enrollments that we follow to the letter for each and every case that comes through. And so unfortunately, the board only sees the denials. Many open enrollments are approved on a regular basis that do meet good cause or that otherwise meet various state exceptions. And those are just immediately approved and the board does not receive notification. So I'm aware there appears to be an imbalance that we're always denying without seeing on the other side of that. In terms of this particular case, there's a state exception where a family member or a parent moves from one school district to another district's boundaries, which Linmar thought had happened. That was not the case. The parent moved within the Cedar Rapids boundary of Jackson Elementary to another Cedar Rapids boundary of Nixon Elementary. And so based on not moving across districts, did not meet the state's good cause. And so per the handbook, we follow that rule. So.
Thank you. That does make sense. And I appreciate your comment about, I always wondered, it seemed like we were just always acting on the denied and not the other way around. Have we in the past, because of special circumstances, approved some after the March 1st? Are you aware?
We approve open enrollments on a weekly basis. Yes. And again, those are ones that meet state cause, often a continuation. So a family who lived in Cedar Rapids and moved to Linmar and wants to continue in Cedar Rapids, that would be an open enrollment that we would approve as a continuation. Okay. Or a family move of other kinds. Those are the most common type. Again, it's with across district boundaries is the distinction here. And this particular parent moved still within the Cedar Rapids boundary.
Thank you very much, John. That does it does remove my doubt, I guess, and would concur with what the recommendation would be. Thank you so much.
Let's move on to Ron Muir then.
I would actually like to add a little bit onto that, or just get a question answered. Does it seem like this, the parent's decision was made with the knowledge that Linmar had given them bad information? You see what I'm saying? If they were acting in good faith and got the information from Linmar that they were going to be allowed it, I mean, we got to put the onus on someone to make sure they're in the right boundary zone. But if they made this in this extreme circumstance and was already approved by Linmar, have we ever had a situation like that before where one school district said, oh yeah, you're approved for it, and then we had to come through and deny it after that?
On the form the parent completed, they marked that there was an approved state exception, and so Linmar approved them in. Linmar did not confirm the exact boundary and mistakenly assumed the parent did live in the Linmar district, which they did not. So Linmar apologized and rescinded their approval, hence kind of the back and forth we're in now. But it was a bit of a mix-up, yes. Totally unintentional, and I think you bring up a good point.
Thank you.
Gary, you also had a question about BA 21-151.
I did.
What is your question, please?
My question is that, and I think this happens a lot of times, but I don't appreciate it. We're asked to agree on this contract that's halfway through. They're halfway through their contractual term. We've entered into the contract, and now we're asked to approve it. It just it doesn't make sense. I have some questions about the consulting, what they're doing and so on. We seem to get a lot of feedback, have gotten a lot of feedback back from teachers, how difficult it is to make these parental contacts and so on. And so again, it just doesn't make sense. What happens if we were to deny it? You know, if I vote against it, the board doesn't vote to approve the contract, what happens?
So I can take this one, Director Anholt. So some lack of communication, you're correct. So the proper channels is for the contract to come through the board, of course, for approval. We thought that had already been done, and we have some new members on the team that didn't know that was the proper practice and procedure. We've clearly communicated that now, and there's been some training on that end of just expectations. So there was some miscommunication, to be honest with you, on that aspect, and I agree they should come before the board to be approved before any of that work happens. We've also been working on making some adjustments and shifts. So I think everybody agrees family engagement is a really important, critical thing for us to be doing in our organization every year, especially in the situation where we're in, where we have a lot of remote learners this year and remote families, and that needs to be a priority. Ron has helped engage and direct that work. He's helped with some of the administrative sessions. He's worked with our building level executive directors, and he's helped us draft a plan. And now we're listening, we're collaborating, we're accepting that feedback, and we continue. You know, we made a lot of shifts in mid-October, and now we're going to make some additional shifts. We've been working on finalizing that communication. We actually did that OLL today. I want Superintendent Bush to look it over before it goes out, but we have another adjustment. But again, it's the right work. Ron's been really helpful. The agreement's until January, and I apologize for the contract not coming to the board beforehand. Again, some oversight, but we've communicated, and I think our team recognizes now all those have to go before the board. We wanted to make sure the board was aware that was a contract and follow the correct formalities.
Gary, I have a question for you. Do you want to have a separate vote for those two items, or do you want to keep it on the consent agenda?
Well, to be fair to the company, I think that we have to approve. They have done considerable work. I appreciate the comments about why it happened. It doesn't make me hopefully going forward, but again, it doesn't sit well with me, the fact that we've done it. And I certainly don't want to give the impression that I'm against by any means having the school family communication. But I do know we've had a lot of, it's caused a lot of turmoil in the process, the way it's gone. So I wanted to bring it forth. I wanted to know what the answer was, and I've gotten that. I wanted to make sure it wasn't me, that I'd missed something earlier.
Do we have a motion?
It sounds like I haven't.
So
we can
are you
put
saying? I'm sorry.
We can just, I guess it's already been pulled, so, has it not? So we can just act on it as a separate.
That's fine.
So your state, the agreement, we want that as a separate vote?
Well, I think we've already pulled it, have we not? Or
you can pull it for a separate vote, or you can pull it for discussion and then leave it in the consent agenda, Director.
I think I've already had the discussion. So
are you okay with? Are you okay with leaving it in the consent agenda?
I am, if no one else objects.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Do we have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry. Did we get a second?
Fortunately.
Okay, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you. Is there any further discussion? This is a roll call.
Director Borcherding?
Aye.
Director Garlock,
Aye.
Director Merschbrock,
Aye.
Director Newman,
Aye.
Director Tominski,
Aye.
Director Anhalt,
Aye.
President Humbles.
Aye. Next, we'll move on to administration. We have our annual request to the SBRC for additional allowable growth, unfunded English language learner costs, and open enrollment students not included in the previous year's enrollment. Do you, as a board, have any questions for Dave? If not, all those in favor of approving the request, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those
Aye.
opposed? The request stands approved. Next, Dave Nicholson has provided the report for the cell for the school infrastructure cell, service and use tax revenue bonds, Series 2020A. Does anyone have any questions for Dave regarding this informational item?
President Humbles, I just wanted to take note that we haven't forgotten the item that was listed beforehand.
Yes.
Before the board meeting, Dave Nicholson had asked us to switch the two items. It would make more sense. So that's why we're looking at this item first as information.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Laurel.
I have a question for Dave. I believe I looked at the information. The interest cost is around $3 million or so on these bonds. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the net interest. Yeah.
So is that a cost on top of the total construction cost of approximately $25 million that we?
No, that is the interest that we will be paying to pay off these bonds. The 25 million is what that the cost to purchase to build the facility. But for the bonds that we are issuing, the repayment of the bonds is coming out of our saved revenue. And so,
just help me understand it. I'm not a financial whiz. So we're borrowing the approximately 10 million in order to construct the school. And then we're paying that money back plus 3 million.
correct.
I know we might not account for it as part of the construction, but just in time, a general way of thinking about it for a layman like me, that is increasing the cost that we're paying to construct the building. Would you characterize it like that?
I wouldn't characterize it. I would characterize it as a finance fee for a borrowing because the construction of the facility, when you were to capitalize the facility, that would not be part of the capitalization cost of that facility. And so that would not be the cost of the facility, but it's cost of financing, but it's not the cost of the facility.
Okay.
Any other questions? Now we'll move to the resolution authorizing and providing issuance and securing the payment of the school infrastructure sales, service, and use tax revenue bonds, Series 2020A, and authorizing the execution and delivery of the documents. Do we have a motion for the resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Do we have any questions for Dave?
I'd like to make a comment, if that's okay. I'm just very upset that we're even talking about this here tonight. We couldn't find room in our agenda to discuss the state of public health in our community, but it's very important for us to rush through this, item so we can build a new school in one of the most well-to-do areas of our community. And I understand that's everybody's policy, but at the very least, we could have taken time to create an agenda item to discuss things that are affecting people now, today. And I just like to say, I think that we have failed as a board in this respect. We failed our staff and students by not discussing it. We've failed the community as a whole as one of the largest organizations in this county where the spread of COVID is out of control, it seems to me right now. And we failed the superintendent, who we sat through our last 2 meetings with and said we were going to provide visionary leadership. And she is taking the time to run this district, provide updates on COVID.
Dexter, I understand that you have a concern about COVID, but we really need to focus on the resolution that we have in front of us.
Right. I'm just saying we failed in this respect. And
I'm asking you to stay on topic.
Then let me say
what
that
we're
we
discussing.
should not move forward with this or anything else here tonight until we have addressed all concerns that are more important than this.
And I appreciate your comments. Thank you. Any other questions for Dave? If not, this is a roll call.
Director Borcherding,
Aye.
Director Garlock,
Aye.
Director Anhalt,
Aye.
Director Newman,
Aye.
Director Tominski,
Aye.
Director Merschbach,
Nay.
and President Humbles.
Aye. Thank you. Next, we will move on to board governance. This is an information item, and I will turn it over to Noreen and Laurel to address any questions.
Thank you, President Humbles and members of the board. This is an annual review of the Voluntary Retirement Incentive Program that comes to you as a first read on the policies and first read on regulations that deal with this incentive program. I would just note that policies 508, 9, and 10 are not disappearing. What they've done has been put into one particular policy, 511, and the same would follow suit with regulation 511.1. So no changes other than the dates and crossing out and eliminating those 3 policies so that we just have one that's easy to read and to administer. With that, I would offer up any questions that people might have about it. Thank you. This will come back then for a second read on the policies at our December board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to learning and leadership. Next up are our representatives from our Building and Grounds Department. They're here tonight to provide us with an update around the district's sustainability plan and Green Team's effort. I will turn it over to John Galbraith for introductions.
Thanks, President Humbles and members of the board for taking the time tonight to kind of listen to some of the work we've been working on since roughly March when COVID first started. Christine and Tammy have really taken this kind of the leadership on this and started it from scratch. And it's, I know there was a few board members, oh man, time flies, probably roughly a year ago, maybe a little bit less than that, that had kind of asked about our carbon footprint and what we do. So a lot of that's built into this. And without that, we have Christine Sorensen. Without anything else, we have Christine Sorensen, who's our Green Team supervisor, and Tammy Carter, our Energy Project supervisor. And I will turn it over to them.
Thank you, John. Laurel, will you just let me know when it's all ready to go?
It should be showing up on the screen now, Christine. Do you see it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, go right ahead. Thank you.
Thank you for having us today. As John had said from the past 6 months, Tammy Carter and I have been working on a sustainability plan that is very inclusive for the entire district. We began with defining what sustainability is and how those practices are adopted within a school setting. Next slide. Perfect. So the goal of sustainability is living and working in a way that achieves a balance among environmental, social values, and the economy. So this graphic that you're looking at right now demonstrates the interconnectivity of how one decision can actually impact all of the others. So an example of that would be purchasing electric buses impacts the air quality around our schools, our operating expenses for the district, and the health and well-being of our students and staff. Next slide. So within our plan, every student will be future ready. It is important for young people to be accountable in their relationship to nature. Sustainable schools consistently incorporate the awareness of climate issues, an attitude around positive change, and explore solutions to these problems within their daily routines and their curriculum. Next slide. So Tammy and I created a framework as a plan for a call to action to members of our district that includes students, educators, support staff, administrators. Our plan provides guidance for integrating conservation into our students' academic experiences, as well as imparts efficiency into every aspect of this organization. It also provides a supplemental section for guidance on key sustainable topics in our district, such as HVAC, energy and water conservation, transportation, and landscaping. So we developed a framework based around 4 key priorities: education, conservation, resource efficiency, and leadership. These are here to guide our actions going forward so that within each priority, we have also identified various opportunities, goals, and strategies. Next slide. So education is our first priority, and this promotes a culture around environmental practices. We also want to ensure an understanding of healthy food choices for our students and have an active green team in each school to support this transition into a sustainability plan. Goals under education include learning how to identify, analyze, and respond to environmental issues. Also, incorporating environmental education into the standard curriculum. Next slide. Our conservation priority focuses on sustainable practices that protect the environment and reduce our carbon footprint. An important component of conservation is to increase the amount of green spaces on our grounds, prioritizing native planting, and creating more outdoor classroom experiences. So an example of a goal for this priority would be assessing our product purchases to reduce environmental and health issues. Next slide. So resource efficiency is our third priority, and this is promoting the wise use of energy and water district-wide. It's important to develop strategies to combat excessive waste consumption, and we can do that through composting, green facility updates, and equipment replacements. This priority ensures we are creating a culture around preserving our district resources, for example, by recycling habits in all aspects, including electronic waste and milk cartons, but also beginning a greenhouse gas inventory to help track and reduce our CO2 and our methane emissions. Next slide. The final priority is under leadership, and we are encouraging sustainable leadership by all staff and students. Our actions and policies extend to the community, setting an example achievable for any organization, a family, or other school districts. It is vital that we train faculty and students on sustainability and conservation initiatives that will empower them to make positive changes. So leadership goals outlined in our plan here are connecting more student projects with local businesses, also creating opportunities for stewardship among our students. Next slide. So we want to thank you on behalf of Tammy, Carter, and myself for allowing us to present today. And we look forward to any questions you might have and developing this plan further with our colleagues. So at this point, I would like to turn it over for a green team update with one of our leaders, Liz Callahan, who has championed some sustainability practices that are pretty incredible through her team at the Cedar River Academy. Liz?
Thank you, Christine. I'm Liz Callahan, and I'm the Magnet School Coordinator at Cedar River Academy. Could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Christine asked me to talk about composting because we are currently the only school that composts school-wide. Our composting story started in 2019 when Kate Hogue, who's our green team leader, started developing plans with some questions about how we could compost school-wide. So they developed a system of best practices for composting. And I say that in quotes because we didn't have anything to do with the composting at the end of the day. So it was all just thrown away. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in came the green team. And this started after I was hired last school year. I started working with 4th and 5th grade students, and we set up a daily project-based learning time to look at how we could actually compost and if there was a way for us to do something with that compost instead of throwing it away. The students spent hours researching solutions, making phone calls, and finally they came across the compost ninja. His name is Kaveh Mostafave, and there he is in that picture. They made a pitch to him and they sold him on the idea that we really in it to compost and we were serious about it. He was impressed by their passion and dedication, and he agreed not just to mentor the students, but then to sponsor our rest of the year composting costs as well. So overnight, we went straight into composting. It was pretty exciting for us. Go ahead for the next slide. Sorry, my internet connection's unstable. There's our cafeteria waste management line. We're able to use that, and they were, within a few weeks, they were using this system. So there's places for recycling, for composting, for rinsing their milk jugs, and they just go straight down the line, and it's pretty fast and pretty slick. We also have composting buckets in every classroom, every bathroom, and our staff lounge. So that takes care of food, but also composting our paper towels and scraps as well. Our students take their show on the road because they're so passionate about it. So they presented to our district green school district leaders about sustainable practices and what else we could do to be more sustainable. And I'm very proud to say that many of their ideas were used in our our district sustainability plan. And finally, how we're composting this year. I was sweating it this summer trying to figure out how we could do it safely when our cafeteria manager, Angie Rodriguez, she developed a very safe plan where back into those bins. So we have a bin for composting, a bin for recycling, and we send it back to the cafeteria, and you can see there, she dumps it into the appropriate bins and takes it out back to be composted. So it's pretty easy. And if you go to the last slide, there's a message there from our students, the little ninjas. And they would like to ask you all. So thank you so much for having.
I think we've lost you again, but thank you so much. It's some amazing stuff that we see happening. It's good to see. We're teaching our kids about composting. That is great. Does any of our board have any questions or comments for our guest presenters? And thank you, Christine and Tammy. I appreciate it.
President Humbles, I have a comment and a question.
Okay.
I happen to be doing a building visit to the Cedar River Academy just a week before the kids you saw in that photo made their presentation. So they invited me to come back, and let me tell you, those kids knew what they were talking about, and they were very much about instructing the adults in the room on how to be better stewards of the planet. So kudos to those kids and all the work that happens at the Cedar River Academy. I do have a question. I know that the city of Cedar Rapids is also getting very serious about a climate action plan, and I know they've had a couple Zoom presentations. I think they're trying to put together a group of community members to guide that action plan. And I'm just curious if the district has a presence in that planning. It seems to me, since we are a large portion of the Cedar Rapids community, that our school district should have representation on that task force. Where are we at on that?
So I can actually attest the fact that I have applied to be on their committee, and Eric Holthouse and I speak on a regular basis. He has been very supportive of our efforts here at the district with sustainability and vice versa. We've actually, Liz, Eric, and I have actually been working on a project together that helps his sustainability plan as well by conducting interviews and surveys. So I have applied for that, but I have not heard. I don't know if anyone else in the district has.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that, because we need to have representation there. So thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
President
I have a
Humbles.
question. Oh,
Okay, we have Director Borcherdine, and then we'll do Director Anhalt.
I just think it's great. I love that students have taken ownership in this work and that we're supporting it as a district, that it's, again, reflective of our strategic plan that we've worked really hard on. I am wondering if a lot of this looks like it was student identified on how they wanted to proceed moving forward. I'm wondering if there's any kind of framework for shareability with any of our other buildings, or if this is pursued by another building, if it would be, again, independent work kind of defined by students and reached out in that manner.
Yes, so Liz, if you don't mind, but you can add to it when I'm done if you'd like. So I hold Green Team Leader meetings every month, and Liz has not only shared her photographs and talked extensively about how they started the process at the Cedar River Academy, but has also included a PowerPoint, as well as talked to Kav at the EcoCare, and he's excited and ready to start working with some of our other interested leaders as soon as they can figure out financially how they want to get that started. And he's giving us a really good price too. But Liz has been very open to sharing and to even mentoring some of our other leaders about getting this process started in their school as well. Anything you want to add, Liz? Okay.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate
Nope,
that there's
that sounds great.
successful
Thank
shared
you.
practice. I think that helps us build together and grow together. Thank you.
Yep.
Director Anhalt, did you have a question?
I did. It's I'm wondering if who empties the compost containers in the classrooms and some of the restroom. Is that well, who does it?
So our custodian takes care of the ones in the restrooms, and I go around with gloves and I take care of the ones in the classrooms. And then we have two that are emptied out each week.
I think I can jump in. So Liz takes care of the ones
Through the compost ninja. He
their
comes by.
kitchen staff is able to gather the rest of them together, those bins that she brings down, and puts them into appropriate garbage bins, and then takes them out to their compost area, where we also have our other dumpsters. Just as a note, because Cedar River Academy has been so successful at increasing their recycling and starting the composting, they've actually decreased their garbage dumpster size and increased their recycling size because they have so little trash now that goes out each week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Anholt, do you have another question?
Well, I just want to state that if there are any plans, I love that we're planning for the future. I'm wondering if at this time we can plant for the future. We've lost an awful lot of trees. I just wondered if they need added resources to be able to reestablish some of that growth. That it takes a long time to do to develop and so on. So that's all.
So that's a great question. I have actually applied for a grant with Alliant Energy and Trees Forever to help particular schools. And I focused first on our green teams because we have such active leaders in those teams this year that I know that they can get the process going much quicker. But also any team that has Green Bucks funds from the PEPL grant can use those funds towards landscaping, which means that they can provide for trees. The other thing is I'm working very closely with Jeff King on the grounds and Rich Rasek to make sure that we're going to be doing a proper tree inventory across the district to make sure we know what we've lost, where we've lost, and where it's okay to plant. And also I have for the district, it's included in the sustainability plan, but there is a list of trees that are accepted by the district. And then I went through and I also marked which ones are native, as well as which ones sustain high pollinator life as a cornerstone for pollinators in our area. And so our teams have those choices to look at for reestablishing our tree canopy.
Thank you. Thank you once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Vice President Tominski, do you have a question?
If I may, just a quick comment and then a question. I think I'd met a lot of the students at the Trees Forever Symposium. I think there was a fair amount of staff there too. So congratulations to the students and just being really passionate and sharing that story with so many people in the community. It was really cool to see young people get engaged with a very professional group. But just educating people on what they're doing. I do also feel that this is like a collision of some of the other work that I do. I just wrapped up an event at Coe College where the winning team was focused on sustainability and composting specifically. So when you talked about creating the compost but not having a place for it, just know there's a group at Coe that if you guys are interested in that connection, I would love to put you guys in contact and get those college students interacting with some younger people and see if there's an opportunity to collaborate in the community. Speaking of Trees Forever, I was curious if I could get an update, if the board could get an update on the Growing Futures program. I think that was a program, not just locally, but around the state to get high schoolers out planting trees. So, commenting on Director Anhalt's question, like, how can we get more people involved in working with an organization like Trees Forever and the community to do some repair and some education at the same time?
Mm-hmm. So the best thing that, if you're looking for particular schools to be able to get involved with that program and bring in the community, the best thing that you can do is start with having a green team as a point of contact. They can have a leader in that building as a point of contact to arrange, and then I can meet with them as well, and to organize a team of students that are really passionate and really interested in it. It doesn't matter which size they are. We have some schools that have, like 100 kids on their green team and some that have 5. So it really just depends on the leader and the passion of the students and who wants to be involved. But I would say start there first. So if you know of any schools or any staff members or even students that are interested and they do not have a green team at their school, the best thing to do is get them in contact with me, and I can get that process started.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Once again, thank you both so much. Lastly, Deputy Superintendent Quaker and Executive Director Rice will provide an update on the reading and math assessments.
All right, can everyone see the screen with a thumbs up? Thank you. I'm trying to split screen. I'm going to try some other Zoom tricks tonight, so hold on tight as we get to some data. So I'll be sharing some fall assessment data with you. This time last year, we looked at our state ISAP scores and compared them to our strategic plan to see our progress. Unfortunately, we can't look at the state assessment results this time as we didn't take it in the spring. So we'll be looking at a few different assessments at elementary, middle, and high school and sharing where we are as a system there. And before I get going, I'll be sharing the presentation, but please know this is a team effort from our elementary, middle, and high school directors, our Office of Learning and Leadership with Deputy Superintendent Quaker, and many other people who have contributed. But for the ease of virtual presentations, I'm just going to be sharing the slides, but many of those folks are online to answer questions and comments at the end. So within our strategic plan, we're focused on our student learning efforts. In tonight's presentation, at the top of the strategic plan, you'll notice that we now have our system indicators, and the data we're going to look at today is a direct relationship to those system indicators and how we're doing as a system. Specifically, that's 3 goals. The first goal being student growth. We want at least 80% of our students to be able to demonstrate growth each year on our state assessment in reading, math, and science by June of next year. There's a second goal around proficiency, and we want at least 80% of our students to score proficient or advanced, again, on that state test in reading, math, and science. So very big, aggressive goal there. And then third, we have a goal around equity, and that's around decreasing the gaps in performance between 3 different groups of students, students in race, students in EL status, and students in IEP status. We want to reduce those gaps as well. And so tonight, while I don't have the state results to share, since we didn't take it, we're going to be looking at some of our reading and math scores to give you a sense of where we are as a system. So first, at the elementary level, we have 2 assessments that we now offer. If you think of a medical diagnosis, sometimes you go to the doctor and they do a dipstick in your mouth and they say ah, and they can quickly, within a few seconds, tell if you have something or not. That's a quick screener. And then other times you go for a full hour-long checkup, and that's more like a deep diagnostic. And at the elementary level, we have both of those for reading. And so the quick checkup screener is called the FAST assessment, and we've done that for many years. The deeper, more in-depth diagnostic assessment is new to elementary this year, and it's called iReady. And that gives us much more detailed results around specific competencies and domains of reading that students may need to improve on. So just to let you know, we've got both of those happening, and we'll jump into the FAST scores first. So the way this chart is organized is by year, and we give the FAST assessment 3 times a year: the beginning, the middle, and the end. You'll notice, if you can see this first blue bar, that in the 17-18 school year, our students started around in the upper 50s in terms of their proficiency. So around 57% of students were, it's called at benchmark on FAST. And by the winter, that was closer to 60. And then by the spring, it was near 65%. So a trajectory of improvement fall through spring. Over the summer, you'll see that between the spring and the next fall, what's called summer slide. And so there's definitely a drop off when students are not in school of scores slipping. And so when students came back in the fall of the next year, there was a decrease in their proficiency relative to the previous year. However, through the winter and then up through the spring again, there was some significant growth, showing that what we were doing in our classrooms was working to help students reach benchmark in their reading scores. So we're very pleased with the kind of trajectory we're seeing. And then was a great story. The summer slide from 18-19 to the fall of the 19-20 school year last year was much smaller. So students were retaining more of the information and staying on track. And then you'll see, again, positive trajectory going into the winter, but there's not a third purple bar here because we did not get the chance to offer a spring assessment. What you'll definitely notice is the orange. Where did we start in the fall of this year? And you can see a significant drop. And I think that's indicative of not having school from March 13th through September. And so what we know is that when students are in school and they're getting great instruction, those results are evident. And when they're out of school for a long period of time, there's definitely some data to show that can be challenging for students' reading ability. So this is something we're watching very carefully, and we want to see that same upward trajectory as students are now back in school. Moving to the middle school assessments, middle school uses that same deep diagnostic called iReady in both reading and math. What's particularly useful, since we did this a year in which we also took the state test a few months earlier, is we were able to correlate those results, and we know that performance on this iReady is predictive of performance on the state test. So it's a very useful measure for us. So on this chart, you'll notice that it goes back to the last school year, which was the first year we offered it in 1920, through this current school year. And it's broken down a little bit differently. Green means students are on track and on grade level. Yellow means they're a little bit below, one grade level below. And red means they're more than one grade level below, so pretty far behind. And what I'd like to highlight is really the trend here we saw from fall in September to December to spring. There was actually a 10 percentage point increase in the number of students who were scoring proficient from here 32 to here 42. And at the same time, we saw a corresponding drop in the students who were the farthest behind. So nearly half of our students were more than one grade level behind in the fall. By the 6 months into the school year, that had dropped down to 38%. So again, that's telling me the things we're doing are working, students are learning, and the trajectory is in the right path. If these bar charts were not indicating growth or were flat, that would cause us to kind of rethink how we're approaching student learning. And then as we start the fall school year here, you'll notice we're a little bit higher than we started last year, which is great news. And we're going to be looking for that same upward trajectory in the green bar and the downward trajectory in the red bar. To share the math numbers last school year are starker in some regard, much lower percentage of students who were on grade level at the beginning of the year. But by March, that had been a 13 percentage point increase in the number of students who were meeting that benchmark, and a very significant drop, another 10 percentage point drop in students who were further behind. So again, positive trajectory, and you'll notice that as we start this particular school year, we're seeing similar numbers, although slightly ahead of where we were last year. When it comes to our high schools are adopting a new assessment this year that's similar to what is used at elementary and middle school called MAP, which stands for the Measures of Academic Progress. That's another way we can measure growth. So high schools have not had a measure like this in years past, and this year, starting in the winter, will be the first time they will have administered this, and they'll do that for reading, math, and science as well. Finally, so now we've got this data and we know where our students are, what are our next steps? So you're certainly familiar with our high reliability schools framework, and the red bar showing that the three areas of great focus for us are our safe collaborative culture, great teaching, and a strong guaranteed viable curriculum. Those those strategies have really impacted the current results we've seen in those upward trajectories year over year over year. This particular year, we've got three focus areas that we are keying in on within the context of remote learning and in-person learning. One is having a great commitment with our teachers to professional learning communities and relying on that team approach to look at data, know where students need to go, and work together as a team to get there. Second, as has been mentioned, an emphasis on family engagement and connecting families to the schools in a way that is deeper than before. And then third, we've set academic goals at the school level. And so that is each school knowing what their particular goals and metrics are, and implementing, in addition to their great teaching, some progress monitoring and some interventions to support students along the way. So shared that in a nutshell, a lot of data for you. But all this just to get us on the path to every learner future ready by June 2022, if not sooner.
Thank you. I guess my question is, you said that students didn't test last spring. And so the testing, when will be the next testing so we can see how it's changing? Because my question is, I know some are online in person, and how is that impacting the academic progress of our students? And for those in particular that have fallen behind, how are we going to get them over that hump?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll address the state test part, and then I'll pass it to Deputy Superintendent Quaker for the second part. So in terms of the state test that we do every spring called ISASP, we did not give it because of COVID shutting down. Our testing window was late April. And so we were not in session, and many districts just did not give it. So our window again will be next April for that state test. And so that state test is how we measure our system indicators. And so it's our most important measure. And having it gone for a year does hurt our way to kind of measure and track progress, which is, it's nice that we have these interim kind of diagnostics to do that in-house and figure out where students are and are not making progress. So Deputy Superintendent Quaker.
So I think a big thing about instruction is still teaching at grade level, right? You don't want to teach below grade level to the students, but then it's providing those interventions and doing that progress monitoring. So that's been tricky this year in the remote environment, but we have those processes and procedures currently in place and additional support now supporting that remote environment for those things to be able to happen. So again, it's that high quality instruction occurring in the classroom. And then on top of that, making sure we're progress monitoring and hitting hard those interventions and those targets so students can perform and we can start to begin to close those gaps. I think it's also being really intentional at continuing to look at the data and doing some comparisons, even remote to in person, to see what students are missing, having that at a high level, and then giving our teachers times within those PLCs to dig into that individual student data, because nobody knows better than them how to individually meet those student needs. And then connecting that family engagement piece, because it's not just about relationships. We're trying to get them active in that student achievement piece this year as well, which will help our students ultimately in the end for sure.
Are there any questions from the board? Any questions that you may have?
If I may, I feel like when we're looking at that data, it seems like the best place for education to happen is inside the classroom. And I think what we're seeing is that it's clearly the safest thing is not to put, like having kids, like going to remote learning. So we know that this is happening. And I think your data is showing that. That I think the fear is that the chasm between, equity is just going to increase through all of this. So I guess I just want to go on the record of let's get aggressive at addressing these issues. Because I think that the safest place is remote learning, but kids are going to suffer from an education perspective. So obviously the staff has thought about this. So I think I just want to talk about it a little bit more on some ideas that we can start implementing now and not waiting.
I would jump in here before anyone responds, but also remind everyone on the board that our teachers and our staff this fall are much better prepared than they were when we threw all this at them in March. So I think we can expect improvements that we didn't see last year. I think we've worked really hard at getting devices in the hands of students. I think our staff has worked exceptionally hard to build lessons that work when they're virtual. So while it's always best to have them in a classroom, I think our teachers, our staff has really stepped up to do the job and do it to the very best of their ability.
Just a logistic piece, and then I think that certainly, Deputy Superintendent Quaker and the executive directors can respond to some of those comments. But from a logistics point of view, it was required by the state to complete the FAST screener the second we hit the door in late September. So we started much later than other districts due to the derecho, and we had to complete that screener by the 30th of September. So there was a lot of scrambling going on to make sure we got our kids assessed right away. So they really had no opportunity for instruction until after we had completed those screener assessments. So that's also the context of those assessments. But absolutely, you're right. The kids hadn't received much instruction, since March.
So our teachers are doing amazing things remotely. And I think the longer they do the remote instruction and the more tools and resources and training that we provide, the stronger they're going to get. We all know in person is best, but we have to balance out that health and safety aspect. But I do think even the intervention piece, we're just putting that in place. Those interventions and that progress monitoring will close gaps for students in small groups. And all of those things are starting to happen. So I do think our results in both environments are going to continue to improve and get better as we go. We're just going to continually have to watch data and make sure that we're responding administratively and then responding as teachers. But I'm amazed every time I get into a remote environment and see what's happening on the progress and what they're able to do with their students. I mean, just think about, we have kindergartners and preschool students in a remote environment on a screen that are learning to read. I mean, it's just amazing that some of those things are getting accomplished at all, but people are learning, have lots of tricks and lots of resources that amazes us at all times. So I think if we continue to monitor and continue to support, we'll see some good things.
Director Anholt, did you have a question?
I did. Will we be able to aggregate out the remote learning scores from the in-person scores? We'll be able to have a chance to monitor to see what the comparison is.
Absolutely.
Between those that are... Okay.
I have a question, President Humbles.
Yes.
Do we have even a rough idea what percentage of students at all levels we're just losing track of right now? Like they're not online, they're not in person. Do we have any? What's going on with that? And do we still have ground to make up with getting hotspots and internet to some of these kids?
So our principals have done an amazing job overseeing the in-person environment and watching that remote. So there's been multiple pieces where, we don't want to disrupt and create a transition for in-person or remote teachers more than we have to. With that said, when there's a family and students that aren't engaging, they're reaching out intentionally to them saying, hey, you need to be in the school environment because it's not working remotely. We haven't had the other case, of course. It's usually for the health and safety reasons that people choose to do the remote environment. But principals are watching that. And I believe in our system, we have a handle on those students. Even CRVA, John and I talked a little bit about that today. Somebody's intentionally reaching out to those kids, going to their house, trying to find where they're at if they're not engaging in that remote environment. And if it isn't working for them, there's a few students I talked to at Metro a few weeks ago. Hey, come to the in-person environment at Metro. We'll bring you there. So I believe in our system, whatever we have to do to meet the needs of our kids is happening. So there are not many students falling through the cracks, if any. We're finding them. We're getting them in the environment that works for them, which is great news because that takes everybody working really hard together.
Thanks. And on the subject of internet connectivity and hotspots, are we still, I think we've got every one of them in the Tri-County area, maybe Tri-State area. Do we still have need?
We do, and I don't think Executive Director Barnum is able to be with us tonight. However, just a tremendous shout out to our Cedar Rapids Community School Foundation, who applied for an additional grant with Toyota, received that grant, and now working directly with us to purchase additional hotspots. So we'll have a couple hundred more that we will be purchasing here very quickly. Our tech department is working on those next plans. So, yep, we are just banging on the door, and our providers are helping us with those. In addition to that, what I'm finding is that we've got some vertical families that were prioritized at the high school level. We're given a hotspot at the high school level, but can hold up to 5 devices. Heard from a couple families that went to remote instruction at our elementary this weekend that they have an older sibling who they're able to share a hotspot with. So our hope is that we're able to provide better assistance due to some family relationships as well with the hotspots that are already in hand.
I saw Director Merschbach just popped in the chat to everyone. Can we just pay the $10 IMON reduced charge? IMON doesn't go everywhere in the city, I know, but is that possible where it is? And do we have any sort of reciprocal deal with MediaCom, or are there pockets where we can't get anything to?
We do have the reduced monthly amount with 2 other providers as well. And so we would just have to look at when we communicated with our families about the IMON grant. It is fairly limiting, so you have to live in the right place in geographically to get that particular service. So part of it is the resident address and then who is the provider for that address. But certainly we could consider those particular options. We would just have to budget for that. So we can budget for hotspots because we know how much they cost and then how much money we have. It's a little more unpredictable with the residential providing option. And we would only be able to do that for a certain amount of time. We would not be able to continually do that unless we knew what the budget would be for that. This is a continued discussion, I noticed, with the city and the county as well, really trying to prioritize infrastructure and prioritizing this for families, for work reasons, not just school reasons.
Yeah. And this is just like, I just don't know how this works. Do the hotspots have a monthly fee with them too?
Yeah, so we know what the data plan is for them. And so we get charged for that.
Any other questions? Thank you so much. And I think one of the things that I'm hearing is the hotspots. We've got to make sure that our students can get connected. So thank you for bringing that up, Director Newman and Director Merschbach. So thank you so much, and to make staff aware of that is a concern about our hotspots, and knowing that you guys will be working on that. So I thank you for that. Any other questions at all? Seeing none, thank you for the presentations, and with no further
Wait a minute, President Humble.
I'm sorry. Laurel, I'm sorry. She has something.
I'm sorry, during the last annual meeting, after that meeting had adjourned, I had gotten some feedback from a couple board members asking me to reread the votes for the vice president to ensure that all votes had been heard. So I'd like to just do that for the record. And for voting for vice president, it was Cindy Garlock for Jennifer Borcherding, Jen Newman for David Tominski, Nancy Humbles for David Tominski, David Tominski for David Tominski, Jennifer Borcherding for Jennifer Borcherding, and Gary Anhalt for Jennifer Borcherding. Dexter Merschbach was for David Tominski. Therefore, the majority of the votes had gone to Director Tominski. Thank you for allowing me to make that on the record.
And thank you, Laura. With no further business, we stand adjourned. Everyone have a great evening, and thank you all.